We know, Jim, that time is money, right?
That's right.
Everybody knows it. I don't know if the guy in the back knows it as much as the people up front do, because when you're quoting a job, it's important that you get an edge, that you can save some time in the manufacturing process, but also in the tool making shops. You need to have an edge on the setup. So we're going to take you in the back in a little while. We're going to show you how we're going to make a setup. We're not going to grind this now, but we're going to show you how to make the setup. To put a 15-degree angle on this shaft here and another 15-degree angle here. We're going to show you the conventional method, which means we've got to put this in a V-block. We've got to put the V-block onto something, generally a sine plate. If you don't have a magnetic one, you're going to have to clamp it down. And you're going to put it on a V-block sine plate, set it up, and grind it accordingly. We can show you how you can save a tremendous amount of time and make it effortless. Instead of fumbling around, finding clamps in the shop, going to Joe, hey, Fred, you know, you got a clamp, you got a screw, or having to make any of the parts, the clamps perhaps, to hold the part. Easier way to do it, folks. Let me show you. This is our SineSet system. It starts with a sine plate. You can convert it into a magnetic sine plate. You can convert it into an angle plate, a sine vise. So you have multiple tools here. So it gives you a competitive edge when you're quoting. It allows quick setups. It's going to require less investment in tools because these are multiple use tools. You can use them in 2 or 3 different fashions. It eliminates clamping, as we said. It needs little or no indicating. You might want to prove it just to make sure you didn't make a mistake, but it doesn't require any indicating. The combinations are almost endless, and all these tools can be used independently. So we're going to take you out in the back to our QC room, and we're going to show you the setups and how fast it is using the SineSet system to set up to grind this particular part. Of course, you can do lots of other things too, but we wanted to show you this one because we're excited about it. So let's go out back, we'll take a look. Remember what our objective was. 15 degrees going this way and 15 degrees going this way. How do we set it up? I'm going to show you 2 ways. The conventional way, which is to make a couple of clamps with a couple of bridges, like so. And here we have a few clamps that we made. And you'll see that in the setup, it's going to be a little bit challenging to make it work. Obviously, we can do that. First thing we want to do is remove this side rail, or drop it down, in this case, which we can do like so. And put our first bridge on. We need a washer. This is the right way to do it. Put the clamp in here and find a hole for it, which will be like right there. And we'll drop the screw in there. Now what we've done is we've registered, what we call a register, the front edge of the V-block up against the face here of the rail of the sine plate. That way we know that the orientation is correct. And we're going to do the same thing on this side. Put a little clamp in there with a bridge. Washer first. Clamp. Bridge on the outside. Now this is the way it's been done for years, and there's nothing wrong with this way technically because it works pretty good. However, you need to keep in mind that it's pretty darn awkward and kind of time consuming, but we can make it work. However, think about the time that it took to make the bridges and the straps if you don't have them. If you happen to have them sitting around, well, that's a different story, but most guys don't, and generally you're out there in the shop saying, hey Joe, anybody seen the clamps? Anybody seen the bridges? Fred had them the other day. Hey, how was your golf game, man? Was it good? Oh yeah, hell, that was great. Yeah, what'd you do over the weekend? Well, I went to a wedding. In the meantime, the beat goes on, the money gets spent, the job doesn't get done. So that's a conventional way, and then we would put this in we'd orientate this like so and put it in the V-block like that, snug it down just a bit, and then I would take it out to the surface grinder and I'd come in here and grind this at a 15-degree angle. Now, we also talked about having to grind the other end of this, and how do we set that up? Now we want to do a 10-degree angle this way. So we want to, or 15-degree angle rather, not a 10-degree, a 15-degree angle this way. So how do we do that? Well, lunchtime. God, seems like we're having lunch here all the time, doesn't it? So how do we set that up? Well, we're going to have to take our clamps off that we have this and set up for this horizontal position, and we're going to set the V-block up in a vertical position, and we'll show you how we do that as well, again using the old method of conventional clamps, which is fine if you don't mind chasing around making or finding the clamps, which I think is a total waste of time, but that's one way to do it. Now, if you had a magnetic sine plate, you obviously wouldn't have to go through all this exercise, but if you only have a standard sine plate, how are you going to do it? Well, that's the only way to do it. So now we want to orientate this like so, because we're going to be putting our flat, 15-degree flat, across this way. All right, so we've set the V-block up in a vertical position, and now we're going to take our strap and we're going to take our bridge and we're going to put it like so, putting the strap on top and putting the bridge behind it to support it. And you can see it takes a little bit of fumbling. I'm not doing this on purpose, folks. This is what it takes to secure it. And I probably could have secured it, and probably should move it up a notch. I can move it up right against here. And again, we have done the orientation. So we have the V-block up against the back rail, as we call it, right here. So we're set there. We know that it's registered, and it'll work just fine. But again, we had to go out, we had to make this little bridge, and we had to make the clamps for it. So we'll just snug that puppy down just a bit while we get the other side. And I never like to tighten bolts very much. I think they need to be only as tight as you need them to be. If you make them too tight, then you just ask for trouble, in my view. So here we go. We'll set this guy in here, and we'll get him snugged down in a second here. Like that. Make sure that we get it feeling to where it's square and parallel, and we'll give that a little snug. Now we'll go back, tighten this side up one more time just to make sure. I like that. That's just about the right amount of wrenching. And now we can take our part, and remember, we're going to grind this on a 15-degree angle like so. So we would now put that in here, and I have to stick it up far enough so it doesn't interfere with the clamps, and give it a snug again on the set screw that's holding the piece down, and you don't need to snug it up very much, just enough to hold it, so when you grind it, you're good. So that's where we are with a traditional conventional setup. Now there's another way, and let me show you that way, and it's a whole lot easier. More importantly, it's faster and it's time saving. So this is what's called the SineSet, or the SineSet rather, set of tools, which allows you to set up your V-block in this case, and there's lots of other tools as well, but allows you to set up the V-block. Well, that was a quick lunch hour, wasn't it? I didn't get a chance to eat very much. So how do we do that? Well, in this case, we can slide this over to where it registers with a couple of holes, and it does automatically line up. We have 2 bolts that are included with it. You drop them in, And as we said, they line up. Come in here and snug them up. I don't know, Jim, how fast was that by comparison with fumbling around with using the straps and the bridges and making them to begin with? I mean, forget that part. You had to go out there in the shop and make them. But here we are. We snug that down, snug this other guy down, and we are ready to go take it out on the surface grinder and do our thing. Look how fast that was. And there's no clamp sticking up here in the way where you could possibly make a mistake and run them into the grinding wheel. That's the vertical method. Let's talk about horizontal, because we did both ways with the conventional clamps, and we'll do the same thing again with the V-block. So let me give you an idea of how that looks for setup and how quick that is. It's basically the same thing. We're going to just drop a couple of screws in. We're going to register it with a back rail like we did, and we're going to drop it in. So remember about the wiping, always wipe, wipe, wipe. That's the same situation here, wipe, wipe, wipe. And we'll take the part out for just a moment so we can get to our screws. And this swings out of the way so we can get the clamp out of the way so we can drop our screws in. And our screws again will line up with a couple of the holes here if I can find them. Here we go, right there. And we'll drop that guy in. That one's snugged up. Drop this guy in. Snug him up. And if we want to really crank down on it, obviously we can. I don't think you need to do that. It depends how much pressure you think you're going to be using or applying to the part that you're working on. In this case, it's not going to be very much because we're going to be on the surface grinder. So that'll be easier. And now we can put our part in. And remember, we're going to do a 15-degree notch right there. So we'll make sure we stick this out far enough so it does not interfere with the grinding operation. We don't want the grinding wheel to run into this thing. That would not be a pretty sight. I don't want to think about that. So here we are, like that. And we'll take this guy right here and give him a little snug down, like so. And voila. Look how fast that was by comparison. Registered, ready to go, nothing to it. So that's one advantage of the SineSet system and how quickly the setup can occur. Now what about some other features that it has, or what about some of the other tools that will bolt onto it? Jim and I were talking about it earlier, and it's pretty darn cool. We've got a whole lot of stuff here that we can show you that works with the SineSet system. So let me take this guy pack apart and we'll go back and show you exactly how we do that. So what else works with the SineSet system? Well, a whole series of tools. Let's start with a vise. Let's assume for a moment that you want to sign vise and you only have a vise. Well, if you happen to have one of the vices that fit the SineSet system, it goes through the same process of not having to clamp with a bridge and a couple of straps. You can move it around and find a couple of holes that will line up. You drop the bolts in, you screw it down, now you've got a signed vise. How cool is that? So why do we care about that? Well, remember we talked about the setup and how long it takes to make your setup and to put the straps on. And again, it will bump up against at least one rail for registration. Whether you do it this way or whether you do it the other way, it's going to line up, folks. So again, you just drop the bolts in, bolt it down, and off you go. There's 2 bolts underneath the jaw. We don't need to get into that. And there's 2 bolt holes right here. You can use all 4 or just 2 going diagonal, which is one way that I would recommend it, and drop the bolts in and off you go. So that's how you make a sign vise. And remember, if you just had a sign vise, how would you orientate it this way? You can't. You can orientate it this way because that's the way it hinges. But you can't do it this way. And you might want to need it that way. So this is one right here. You can click on it, you'll be able to see it. Here's another one. Let's supposing you need an angle plate on there for whatever reason. The angle plate does the same thing. It lines up, 4 bolt holes, either on this side or the other side. Not necessarily both sides, but either one or the other. And again, you just drop the bolts in, line it up with the screw holes, and off you go. That's another way. That's another tool. So you can click on that guy as well and see it. What else have we got? Well, let's assume that you needed to go 90 degrees for whatever reason. How do we go 90 degrees? The sine plate will not go up 90 degrees. And by the way, Jim, I don't know if you can see that, but this strap is engineered in such a way that it never protrudes above the surface. So if you put your part on there, it's never going to interfere. Now, I've seen straps that do, which means if it protrudes up just a little bit, you could be setting your part on there, you could be off. Or let's say that it protrudes up a lot where it's visible. Now you got a problem with your part. How do you get your part in there if it has to hang over? So ours is engineered in such a way that it's always below the surface no matter what angle you set it for. So go back to this thing. This is another one that will line up, drop the bolt holes in, and off you go. And again, it'll go that way or the other way. So you can orientate it like that, drop your 4 bolt holes in, and now you've got the same hole pattern that you had on the sine plate. Or you can turn it around and do it the other way. Let's say that you needed to use this surface for whatever reason out here because you want to put clamps on it, let's say. Well, there you go, 90 degrees from the sine plate. And that's another one. You can click on it and you'll find it. Or, and I like this one best of all, our magnetic chuck. Because now if you have a conventional sine plate and you want a magnetic sine plate, generally you would buy 2. One magnetic, one non-magnetic. Well, with our set, you've got it all. You've got the magnetic chuck, which you can set up on the sine plate, and there's 4 bolts on the bottom here, and there's 4 screw holes. I don't know if you can get that, Jim, sorry about that, Jim. There's 4 bolt holes that are tapped, actually screw holes that are tapped, and there's clearance holes in the sine plate. Bump it up against a rail, which is registered. Take your 4 bolts, which happen to be right here, and you run these guys in on the bottom. Screw it in, and now you have a magnetic sine plate. That's all there is to that. It's pretty cool. One other feature about it, and also you can click on that one if you like. One other feature about this sine plate and the magnetic chuck. The magnetic chuck itself, remember, always slide, guys. Slide, 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 clean, clean, clean. If you want to use this as a squaring chuck, it's square within a couple of tenths all the way around. So you can set it, put a part in here, or you can set it down by removing this rail right here. You can set it on this side and it'll be square within 2/10 that way as well. So this is not just a magnetic chuck for the sine plate. This is a magnetic chuck that you can use as a squaring plate as well. And again, the sides are all registered, so you put it up against it and you're off to go. I like that one a lot. Now there's one last one, and again, you can click on that guy too if you like. There's one last one here that I really like a lot, and that's our master grind. Supposing you need to grind a center, or you need to grind something round or put a flat on it, but you need an angle that's not, obviously if it's not on a surface plate, it's not going to be flat, but you can drop this on here like so, and again you've got the same opportunity to line it up with the holes, drop them in, drop the screw holes or drop the screws in the screw hole like so. Tighten it down. No clamping required. So now we have a sine plate and a master grind or an index fixture that will allow you to do a multiple of things, from angles to flats, indexing. It's a great combination. So we have this whole series of tools called the SineSet. Click on that and you'll see it. And you'll be able to use so many different tools and save so much time, and of course time is money. So the sine plate system is really the way to go. Get rid of the clamps, get rid of having to make the bridges. All you need is a couple of screws that are supplied. You drop them in and off you go. Think about the time that you'll save just in setups. And that's what it's all about. You don't want to run around the shop looking for clamps, screws, all that. It's all right here. That's the story of the SineSet system. Well, so there you go. What do you think, Jim?
I think that saves a ton of money on setups.
I know it. And it's hard, it's a tough concept to get people to understand that this is a global system and how these tools can be used independently. So hopefully that gave you an idea of what it's all about and how it can save you so much time and so much money, because as we saw, what are we doing? Dropping bolts in there, right? Hex head cap screws in and fastening them, and we're done. No clamping, no indicating, no bridge making, no scrounging around. Think about the time. I could do that same setup in probably 1/25th the time that it takes to do it conventionally. And that's assuming I have to run around the shop and find stuff from Fred and Joe and Harold. So you want to take a good look at that system before you make an investment in any tooling of that type for the grinding room and for inspection. So that gives you a great insight on what the product's all about. So we hope it helped you to appreciate the fact that you can save a lot of time, because we did this back here for ourselves and we found out that it worked and we use it every day. So thanks for watching.